point is, we see that rebuild, 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 all those words about rebuild. The better question is, has EA College Football 25 eliminated rebuilds? What is up, everybody? It is Jake back with the MF Film Room. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be updated on all things EA College Football, hit that red subscribe button. Do it right now. We got a special going. If I can get this channel to 1,000 subscribers by July 14th at midnight, I will be giving one free deluxe edition of the game to one of my subscribers. Xbox, PlayStation, doesn't matter. And if you've already got the game already pre-ordered, you'll get yourself $100 cash. So hit that red subscribe button, hit the like button as well, and follow me on Twitter/X. That fame is growing. If you like college football content, go subscribe to my other channel, Master Football with Jake Posey, link in the description. But enough about all that EA College Football content. Let's go. All right, guys, I am sitting here absolutely barbecued to a crisp. As you can see, I've got my After Sun aloe vera gel because I got fried this weekend. It was 95 degrees outside. It was amazing. The water was cold. It was just because it was all snow melt. It was an incredible day for me this last Saturday. However, we're sitting here and I was thinking, you know what, dude, we're probably going to get some sort of update every single Friday from now until the game comes out. That's 6 Fridays. We're going to get an update. One of the Fridays came and nothing. There's absolutely no update on this game. So what I want to do is talk through something because there actually was an article that came out from UPROXX. UPROXX had a really good article here talking about something, in the very last section of this article talked about a question that I suppose we haven't really addressed so much that we need to get into right now. One of the most popular words when it comes to NCAA Football 2014, NCAA Football 24, EA College Football 25, whatever it is, one of the most popular words that I see out there on a consistent basis is the word rebuild. We look at over here, rebuild. We got the dynasty we got the Vandy rebuild. We got ourselves a Georgia Tech rebuild. We got a South Alabama rebuild. We've got a Riverside Royals. We've got, all these different rebuilds, best teams to rebuild in Madden 25 franchise mode. Again, that's Madden, but we're talking about EA College Football here. So this article brought up a good point that we're going to get into the article here in a second. But the point is, we see that rebuild, 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 all those words about rebuild. The better question is, has EA College Football 25 eliminated rebuilds? So here is that article from UPROXX, and it's from Robbie Callan. Robbie Callan has done a really, really good job. He says here, going deep on what did and didn't make Dynasty Mode and EA Sports College Football 25 with the lead game designer. And don't worry, guys, I'm going to spare you the whole entire article because it's a big article here. But again, I have down here this question I wanted to address. So this one, the bold is from Robbie, and then the unbolded is from Ben Howmiller. So it says here, you talked about making it something you feel like you build and that story element. It used to be you could kind of game the recruiting as a small school and you could make it pop in 2 years or whatever. How did y'all try to strike a balance in terms of you don't want to make it impossible because it's part of what people love to do, but also you want to make it more realistic. Like if I'm going to take Georgia State to a title, it's going to take some time. How did you kind of decide on what the time frame is that you want that journey? And he says here, great question, because the other thing is you're competing against is people who don't want to spend, 20 years to get to their dream school. And I'm not sure if you meant get to your dream school or build your school into a dream school. They want to get there relatively quickly, but also they don't want it to just be handed to them. So I think that's something you think of both. I'll use Road to Glory as an example. You don't become the starter immediately in Road to Glory. You have to earn your playing time and work yourself up on the depth chart. So on the dynasty side, it's the same sort of thing. Like those 4- and 5-star kids are not going to be interested in a smaller school from the start. You have to build your grades up in that school piece to be more attractive to those kids, and they have to like what you have to offer. So you might build up Georgia State to be a perennial power, #1 team in the country every single year. But if a kid cares about proximity to home and he's in California, quote, sorry about that, I'm staying close over here. So those are the things that I think that make the game and this sport so much fun, is that association you build with these players because they are ultimately choosing you. And so you can't just manipulate draft logic and things like that just to win a Super Bowl and have the #1 pick in the same year. You could be Alabama, you can be Georgia, and still not get the #1 player in the country because he wants something you don't offer. So what I want to do is actually break that down, because I think that this video is going to lean more into what actually happens in college football right now and how it could potentially transfer over to the game, specifically transfer portal, what it actually looks like in terms of a coach's career, what recruiting looks like, what does, more importantly, what doesn't happen in recruiting, and then ultimately kind of what NCAA Football 2014 did, how it's going to change, and what this game ultimately could look like. Let's get into that right now. All right, so in real college football, we got to understand some things here. So when you think about, why players enter the portal in 2024, this is the biggest thing here because the portal is going to be a huge dynamic in this game that wasn't in previous games. In fact, it's not in any game out there. There's no college football game, and there's no college football game with the transfer portal. This is the first attempt we're going to see at it. So you see that right here. And I see this as two different scenarios when it comes to players who enter the portal. So there's multiple reasons why you do it, but typically there's a higher level class and a lower level class. So the higher level class, those 5-star recruits, those top flight players. Again, typically what happens is they enter for a couple of reasons. First one is dollars, just the dollars, okay? Jordan Addison, I'm not saying he only entered for that, but I know that certainly helped. I mean, he won a Biletnikoff Award with Pitt, and then he left to go to USC. One can only imagine, the championship contender potentially, but also the fact he probably got a big chunk of money. Also, we see here is not playing as a freshman, especially at quarterback. We're going to get into that in a second here. You see Quinn Ewers. So Quinn Ewers, people forget, he actually enrolled early and went to Ohio State, sat behind C.J. Stroud. He left ultimately to go to Texas, and now he's playing and going on from there. Following their coach, we know Caleb Williams is an example of that when he was at Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley goes to USC. He comes over and then kicked off the team. Too many Texas A&M players. I'm just a joke, okay? Texas A&M, you guys are going to be just fine. Mike Elko's going to turn the thing around, okay? But y'all know what it was with Jimbo Fisher there. And then the second class, kind of the underclass when it comes to the transfer portal, is all the non-stars kind of role players. So for that, it's typically somebody they just want to play. That's the 4-star who commits to a school, and then he transfers to play away. So you think about Brock Vandegrift transferring from Georgia to Kentucky. He just wanted to play. He's a star quarterback. He actually might be a really good quarterback. He was a top 10 quarterback in the country when he came out. But for him, he's like, I just want to play. So playing time, somebody could be homesick. Your coach could get fired and you got to enter the portal just to see what's going on. Or maybe you want to go from a higher level of competition. You think about Jared Verse. Jared Verse was at FCS Albany. He is in the portal. He goes to Florida State. So that's typically what's going to happen there. Now, he's a star player, but nobody knew he was what he was when he was at Albany. We also need to make sure we discuss here what doesn't happen in recruiting in 2024. So this is a more of a shot at what happened with recruiting classes when it came to NCAA football 2014 in those games before that. So a 1-star recruit who wants playing time. I'm sorry, you suck. You're a 1-star recruit. You better be more patient than that. Also here, very important, when you talk about 5-star players who don't have one or more of these in their most important pitches, coach prestige, championship contender, playing time, and brand builder. There might be some other ones you want to show in there, but I think that like stadium atmosphere and academic prestige might be important to some players. I know for Andrew Luck going to Stanford, that was one for him. But typically, if you're a 5-star player, you want to have a really good coach, go to somewhere you're going to win, somewhere you're going to play, and somewhere that's giving you some NIL money. Those right there, those 4, some of those have to be included. Could others? Yes, but one of those 4 for sure is included in their top 3 pitches if you're a 5-star player. Also here, one thing that's important, players who enter the portal never enter again. That is something that doesn't happen. We see that a lot, where if somebody leaves somewhere for playing time, they go somewhere else and they don't earn playing time, they will enter the transfer portal again. The strongest predictor of entering the transfer portal is previously entering the transfer portal. It's just the way that it is. Also here, 5-star quarterbacks who willingly sit behind someone for multiple years. That's what doesn't happen in NCAA football or in college football in 2024. If you don't believe me, check this out. So this was the previous year's class. Again, the 2024 class has not played yet, but the 2023 class has. If you check out these top 7 players, what do you notice with the top 7 players? So Arch Manning, okay, Nico, and then we have Jackson Arnold at number 4. And then 3, 5, 6, and 7 all entered the portal and left their teams. Dante Moore to Oregon, Malachi Nelson to my Boise State Broncos, Jaden Rashada, who's said yes to the dress to everybody. He is now at Georgia, and then Aiden Childs, who was at Michigan State. Now, the interesting thing was actually 2022 was a little bit more of a stable class here. So we check out these top guys here. Drew Allar still there at Penn State, Cade Klubnik at Clemson, Connor Weigman, I hope I said that right, at Texas A&M. Ty Simpson is at Alabama as well. Devin Brown still at Ohio State. Walker Howard transfers from LSU. Gunnar Stockton is still at Georgia. Nick Evers transferred, and Malik Murphy transferred. So 1/3 of the top 9, 3 of the 9, have left in 2022. However, when you check out the 2021 class, you find out that the 2022 class was the exception to the rule as well. So the 2021 class, check out these top 10 players right here. So Quinn Ewers, transfer. Caleb Williams, transfer. Sam Heward, transfer. Brock Vandergriff, transfer. Caden Salter, transfer. Kyle McCord, transfer. Ty Thompson, transfer. Tyler Buckner, transfer. 8 of the top 10 guys transferred. Now, Drake May at number 4 and J.J. McCarthy at number 6 both stayed, and they were 3 and done. Caleb Williams was a 3 and done as well, but with a different coach, or with the same coach at a different school. So 8 out of 10 that year, whereas 3 out of 9 for the 2022, and then 4 out of 7 for 2023. Again, if the narrative is in college football that you can just pick up, or in EA College Football 25, you're going to be able to sign a 5-star and bench him, good luck. And talking about NCAA Football 2014, for when it comes to building a team, and that article actually spelled this out a little bit there too. The way to build a team, it was basically, there was one way to do it. Build out your recruiting tree as soon as possible. You might give 3 points to antifreeze, so you won't be able to be, ice the kicker. You won't have your kicker iced, something like that on the coaching side. But typically you build out the recruiting side because it was way more powerful. You would recruit players that are interested in you in week 1, and then week 2 and on, you would add all 4 and 5-star players that were not talking to any school. It didn't matter if their most important things were boom, 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 and for you it was, low interest, low interest, low interest in what you had. You got 20, passive points. You would still be able to get them if nobody else gave them points. You could just max out the amount of points you gave them to, and they would commit. You would keep on trucking along, and you'd be playing for national titles by year 3 to 5. Sometimes year 2, sometimes year 6, but generally 3 to 5 years. That was the thing. You could do that at Kent State. You could do this at Alabama, or you could do it quicker at Alabama. You could do it at any school with this strategy. It doesn't matter if you're a high conference, low conference. This was the strategy. It basically worked every single time. I also wanted to talk about that. So we've talked a little about the transfer portal, a little bit about recruiting. I also want to talk about kind of what it means to be a college football coaching career, what it kind of looks like. So typically what happens for a coaching career in real college football is you start off as a GA for a couple of years, and then you're position assistant for a couple of years, then you're positional coach, then you're coordinator, then you're a head coach. There all actually are 2 different paths for head coach at a power program. Sometimes you're the head coach of a lower program, lower to mid, and then you transfer to a higher program as the head coach, or you could be a coordinator at a power program, and then you could be hired as a head coach later on. Kind of those 2 paths there for the head coach. Then you see here that coaches, quote, max out what they can do at certain schools, and then they jump when their stock is high. Sometimes coaches leave head coaching roles at smaller schools for coordinator roles at bigger schools that they consider a promotion. See Sean Lewis, who was the head coach at Kent State, who left to be the offensive coordinator at Colorado with Deion Sanders. And then here, the exception to this is some coaches stay at a lower to mid-level school for 30 plus years and they win multiple titles. That's the exception. Gary Patterson at TCU, maybe no national titles, but he is the exception to the rule. And when you check out the most recent hires in 2024, a lot of these make sense when it comes to these general paths of head coaches. So checking out the new head football coaches in 2024, it kind of speaks to this. So you think about even Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer was in the national championship. Alabama was not. But remember here, he decided to leave Washington, which was in the national championship for Alabama, because it was going to be an easier time to get back year over year. Alabama has unlimited resources. He decided to go from Washington to Alabama, despite the fact that his team at Washington went farther than Alabama did. A good example of the person who was at the lower level school, they kind of maxed out what they could do and they went to the bigger school, would be Kurt Signetti from Indiana. He was at James Madison. They went from James Madison FCS to James Madison FBS. They were undefeated for a time there, and then they ultimately lost the game. But he kind of realized, like, I could stay here at James Madison and keep bashing my head against the wall here because there's going to be some things we kind of hit our head up against, talent, this and that, recruiting, limited resources compared to other schools. He goes to Indiana. Indiana is a lower level team in the Big Ten, but again, he even saw the ceiling with that job. He decided to leave. Is that coming to EA College Football 25? We'll check that out. I wanted to pull some of these quotes here just so we know kind of what's going to happen with recruiting here. You can be Alabama, Georgia, and still not get the number 1 player in the country because he wants something that you don't offer. That's important to remember there, because the good thing about that means is that if you're those top flight programs, you can't just mass points your way to get somebody who's not interested in you. So you might build up Georgia State to be a perennial powerhouse. One, that means that you can do that. The number 1 team in the country every single year. But if a kid cares about proximity to home and he's in California, sorry about that. I'm staying close over here. Again, that's going to be one of those things where it's going to limit what you can do. You can't just do whatever you want as a recruiter on those high levels because of those limitations. So on the dynasty side, it's the same sort of thing where like those 4 and 5 star kids are not going to be interested in a smaller school from the start. So those rebuilds, you think about what it means to be a rebuild. You're going to have to go after those big guys at some point, or be really patient with your 2 and 3 star guys. Again, you and I both know those 4 and 5 star guys. You got to get some of those guys. You have to build your grades up in that my school piece to be more attractive to those kids, and they have to like what you have to offer. It's really interesting there. We're going to get into that later on in the video because I think that says, a lot about what this game is going to be about. It says people don't want to spend, 20 years to get to their dream school, or to turn their school into their dream school. I'm not sure so clear about that. They want to get there relatively quickly, but they also don't want it to be just handed to them. Again, remember here within recruiting, we also know you won't even be able to scout someone until you have had an official visit. So with that, those are some of the limitations that we know, some of the things kind of says the big picture things within recruiting. Let's see what we think we know right now. So again, what we think we know, based off what they said there, you can still win championships at lower to mid-level schools. Said Georgia State fans, don't worry. Georgia State Panthers, you guys can do it in Atlanta, in the former Braves Stadium. You guys can do this, all right? But again, they did mention, though, that pitches are going to matter a lot more in recruiting because college football is recruiting. A lot of people said, oh, yeah, well, Les Miles was never a very good coach. He wasn't a very good coach, but he was a good head coach in college because he could recruit. Recruiting is half the battle. So you also know here, if you can improve your grades, you can create a powerhouse. I do think that's true where they say, hey, get your grades up, get your grades up, get your grades up. That will help out everything there with recruiting. So the fact that you're Georgia State, maybe, you might have certain things like, program history is going to be harder to build out. But if you take a couple years and you're patient with it, you could eventually do that as well. Also thinking, though, that if you don't improve your grades, you may experience the same problems over and over again in recruiting. I'm thinking that's the same big reason why Kalen DeBoer, who was in the national championship, left the team. I know they say, oh, it's for money. The money only gets paid as long as he stays there and be successful. I think the big reason why he left is that the limitations from being at Washington. I know that's crazy to say. They were in the national championship, but they have limitations as compared to Alabama as a program. He doesn't have that anymore. Do I think it's going to be impossible to take a lower level team to the national championship? No, I think you can do that. However, the concept of a rebuild means you're going to be able to go in there, you're going to gut the team, you're going to turn around, it's going to be a grand old time. It sounds like EA College Football wants that to be a more difficult process. The good question is, are we talking is going to be 5 years? Are we talking 10? Are we talking 15, 20 plus? Are you going to be able to get those recruits at those small level schools? Is Sam Houston State going to be able to sign some 5-stars? You guys get in the comments and let me know. All right, guys, we are sitting here just waiting for more news to come out. I've got a couple other things here, some hypotheticals I want to go over, but we'll talk about those at a later date. Remember, I am going to be getting a free deluxe edition to somebody out there, PlayStation, Xbox. Hit the red subscribe button, especially if you stay here all the way to the end. I really appreciate that. Like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I really appreciate it. That's it for me, guys. I'll see you guys later. I am out.